UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
Good evening and welcome to UAP Crossfire on KGR Radio DB. And since I'm running the show tonight, I'm going to start out early because we always run up to the minute because my co-host can't keep track in the private chat when we're running out of time, and we always run right down to the last second, and we're either loving each other or fighting. So I just want to make sure I bring it up early, and it has a special meaning tonight. God's peace that surpasses all knowledge and understanding. And I am extending a very special prayer and support to the family of Nina Steele. For those that remember me on some other shows that I were on in my old show, occasionally Nurse Kayla would be part of the crew. That is Nurse Kayla's sister who tragically passed away last weekend in a vehicle accident. It was totally unexpected, very, very traumatic for her very close-knit family and her friends. A lot of outpouring of love and support, and I would like to just make a quick mention to everyone that's listening about this very, very dear lady that has departed. Also, I want to take the opportunity to say hello to the greatest audience on the planet. Hopefully, I'll be doing that again as part of my tag on my own show. Schedules have been extremely difficult to maintain and to get that done, but I really appreciate the effort that this audience puts in. We've had some really, really big weeks the last few weeks and people listening to the show. We've had a lot of great emails, and I always ask the audience to please send emails and do not hesitate to send comments, good or bad, questions. I've directed a lot to Dan, the Padre, on some of the particular folks that wanted to really engage with him. And he has his website and he's available. Don Ecker's available, Chris is, but you can always send it to me and I can send it on to them and then we can always work it out. But I really want to thank the audience for really being very supportive in every respect over the last few weeks. So I really am very thankful to each and every one of you. Been a big week. It's nice to know that I can still throw the odds out a little bit about when things are going to happen, but truly an absolute near perfection on that strike. And from Commander Cobra, and I'm sure I speak on the behalf of my co-hosts, and I'll let them chime in, an unbelievable delivery by that strike package in every respect to do what they did. And for the B-2s that led, and I will bend over here in a second. That is actually one of the B-2s that was on the strike. That's the 100th Air Refueling Wing, which is out of Mildenhall RAF in Mildenhall, England. That's one of the tankers that refueled them on their mission. I have a somewhat distant connection to the 100th ARW, and I think it's one of those really awesome pictures. So with that said, let me introduce my co-host, and we'll jump into it. Upper left on my screen, Chris DiPerno. Right above me, Dan the Padre Carlson. And on the West Coast, and to my left, but not a left person, Don Ecker. Gentlemen, it's great to see you.
Hi there.
And it's once again my pleasure and my privilege to be with you and having a show with you. So, Chris, what do you have tonight?
What do I have tonight? Well,
Well, wait a minute. You have a whole bunch of stuff. Let me rephrase that. What do you have tonight that you're going to allow us to talk about since you showed us all this great stuff and so we can't talk about it?
All right. Well, let me just say this. I have got I just received in the mail a piece of material that I will be bringing to the symposium that they have just have sent to the lab. They just got the lab report. It's very exciting. I'm not allowed to talk about the lab report, but I will definitely talk about it after the symposium. But I can tell you that people are going to be very excited about what the lab report contains in regards to this piece of material that we were given. The first piece was actually stolen. It came to Pennsylvania address, stolen right out of the post office, from what I understand. Second piece came up to New York, where we were able to get it, and we're able to directly send it to the person at the lab. And then from there, we were able to get it analyzed by one of the top labs, and comes back as a very interesting thing, something not of this earth.
Well, we look forward to having the full report when we can talk about it after you do the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Ecker, the Decker. How are you, sir? You look even better this week. How you feeling?
Well, actually, quite a bit better. Not out of the woods yet, but doing much better. Today has been kind of a crazy day. Yesterday was my bride's birthday, and we celebrated that pretty low key. I mean, I'm not up and about, but anyway, today she decided to go down to the mailbox, take our Miss Bailey with her, and she flew back into the house, crazed. I saw a crazed look in her eye. I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Somebody put a for sale sign in front of our house." And I said, "What?"
That seems a little unusual.
I drug my sorry ass outside.
Is that a drugged sorry ass? Is that both words that sound the same in that?
Well, basically I dragged it.
Were your neighbors trying to tell you something?
Yeah. No, so I brought it in, and I looked, and I called up the people that had it. And a guy at the end of our lane is selling his house and moving it. So when they send somebody out to put up the for sale sign, he got the wrong house. So
it's the house he wants to sell.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought you had I thought I was in some bad HOAs, but that one's got to take the cake.
I just thought it would maybe have been one of your neighbors saying, "Take the hit."
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Except my wife was supposed to be on a symposium tonight, and her internet just quit. So she's a little crazed about that. So we're trying to hang in there. You know what I'm saying?
The entire KGRA DB audience and all of us here wish her a belated birthday, and please remind her that we're sorry that I didn't get a chance to call you guys yesterday on her birthday. I apologize.
Oh,
but
hey.
I do want to show real quick. It doesn't show up. I don't know. See, maybe I can get it to show up.
Bring it closer to the camera, Commander.
With my green screen, it's not working. It's the framed picture, the poster, the magazine I've put in. I had it framed that Don sent, and then I did a photocopy of the page that he and Vicky signed. So,
all right.
I appreciate that, and it's with honor that it hangs in my office. Padre, how are you this?
Well, before we go to the Padre, I did have one thing I wanted to say. Okay, just a short thing.
Absolutely.
But, I've seen a lot of hate directed toward the president after that strike, that surgical strike we conducted on those 3 nuclear facilities in Iran. And for all those people hating on him, I want to just say this. As somebody, myself, who formerly was on the pointy end of the spear once upon a time ago, okay? You people have forgotten what those Iranians have done over the last 15, 20 years. When we were in Iraq, when we were in Afghanistan, our troops, our young men, our young women that were there fighting for your freedom, okay, from Islamic fascism, They were blown up, IEDs, booby traps, all kinds of sophisticated things the Iranians had been designing and manufacturing for those Muslim thugs, okay, in Afghanistan, the Taliban, in Iraq, those guys, okay. And I got to say this, if it were up to me, and boy, I may get some hate for this, I'd still be bombing those sons of bitches. That's enough.
Commander, can I take just 1 minute to say something?
Sure.
Okay. I will tell you this, people. You got to start voting better than what you're doing. You got people out there. In New York City now, they're going to have the first communist. He won the primary, and there's a good chance he's going to be the next mayor. And he's already said his plans are to take all the grocery stores and make them state-run. All the grocery stores are going to be state-run. He's already said he's going to reduce the police and defund the police. And then in California, of course, you got that crazy Karen Bass in L.A., but you now have that other vice mayor who's telling the gang members to hold their ground against ICE, to defend their turf against ICE. So, people, you got to stop taking these politicians and get rid of them. You got to vote them out of office. That's all.
Well, with that happy twist of things, let's go to the center of the United States, up in the heartland in North Dakota, where I saw one of the scariest movie clips I have ever seen. One of those Ring cameras caught the tornado that went through North Dakota. If you have not seen this, after the show, please do a quick internet search. And I'm telling you, that is some of the most frightening footage I have ever seen when you see this tornado that was coming across in North Dakota. And on those frontier lands, the Padre, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm a little south of there. I'm in South Dakota.
I know, but I'm saying you're out there in the frontier lands.
I am. And I have a little Facebook page that I do weather on. And so I was tracking that stuff as it went through. And we had some close calls here in my neck of the woods. It's been very stormy the last few days. And today's is one of those really hot, muggy days where, you know, if you sit down in a chair like I'm in now and you're wearing short pants and you shift your weight, sounds like you've been dining at Taco Bell for a week. So I have to be cautious about how I move my body here tonight. Anyway, it's great to be with you. I know we have a lot of great material tonight, and I'm looking forward to diving into it.
Well, gentlemen, Forbidden History. If you haven't, for the audience, if you haven't picked this book up, interesting how I found this book. The compound that I stay at when I am working in Saudi has a like a lend, lease, and give take library, and I drop a number of the books off that I read. Usually I get at least one done on the way in and try to read one on the way coming out because of the long flights. And I found this book for Hidden History, and I took a quick look at it, and initially my impression of it wasn't very good. I just looked at it and its essays. When I took a couple minutes to really delve into it, I was so impressed. And I think Don especially and the Padre will have a real likening to this. And the reason I say that is because some of the things they're talking about is things that both of you have brought up with deep understanding and eloquence on a lot of the stuff that we have been taught is fact, is not. And a lot of the things that are out there, especially the biblical account, I'm not saying the book based on a faith, I'm talking about the record alone that the Bible presents. Mm-hmm. Many of these scientists are talking and putting scientific fact against some of the things that are being found on the earth.
Yep.
I was really amazed. I think it's there's people in there that I kind of knew about, but did not know their name. So I think we got the last 4 or 5 copies. Hopefully, if a few more people in the audience get it, maybe they'll do a reprint. You may end up getting one from a secondhand shop. Forbidden History. It is a compilation of essays put out by a number of different researchers, scientists, and scientists reporting about other scientists. And I think it's a very interesting disclosure on a lot of the science that is eliminating it. As you all know, I always say, yes, I agree that we live in climate change. I just don't agree with the narrative that's out there, that it's based on what the current philosophy is of carbon building up and man is solely responsible for it. I think that's a rather obtuse and inaccurate way to go forward. You'll find some interesting things in there to talk about that and how, much like the early Christian church, which I'm a little bit more familiar than any other church, competing concepts or teachings from Christ were eliminated for the one that everyone said, this is where we're going. So science has repeated that in many instances. This is a very interesting book. So Forbidden History. I hope you enjoy it.
I am enjoying it. Yeah, very good.
So we've had a really great run the last couple of weeks. We had John Burroughs, and I hopefully everybody will keep in mind, and they saw that when I brought it up in the setup for the show, that they will keep an eye out for John's book that's coming out, or I should say is out right now. We had a great run and a great discussion. There is a new or a later Wall Street Journal entry that's come out discussing what is this deception. And it ties directly to what we were talking about on the strike. Deception has a bad connotation, but deception was used extremely effectively over the events of the last 5-6 days. And I do want to do a little bit of a hat tip to the 2 B-2s that flew west with their transponders on, which should have been a big giveaway for most people who are playing in the audience, that if the B-2s were going to go on a strike, they probably wouldn't have. The transponder is a radar repeating signaling device that when a ground radar or an airborne radar hits it, it sends out a very specific signal. Partially you control in the cockpit, partially it's set by the system, so that air traffic control and other people can safely navigate you through airspace so that you don't have collisions with other aircraft. But when a tactical or strategic mission of this nature goes out, generally those aren't turned on. And they surely didn't do that. Well, the next thing someone's going to tell you is, well, the reason they did that is they were flying through continental airspace, and they did not want to have any problems with air traffic like airliners and civilian, which is far greater use of the airspace than anything the military's doing. But they did attract a lot of attention, and they headed west with tankers, and it was very convincing what they did. A lot of money was spent on that feint, but that money was well spent because that feint was to really redirect. Because when people saw that, and the flight awares and all the other people that track flights saw that, and all the other folks that are going out, it immediately started being reported. It immediately went into the open source media and social media that's out there talking about this. And then people started to calculate, well, if they're going that way, very likely they're going to Guam. Very likely they're going to go to Diego Garcia. This is to put more pressure on the mullahs. This is driving towards that. All part of the feint to throw the attention to move a much larger strike package from the continental United States with no plans to land any place but where they took off, Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, and complete the mission. Now, to me, that's a well-placed, well-done deception. I think it's a well-practiced tool. I think it reflects a lot of the activity that's going on in our world today, especially with social media, and the way that the only way you can get inside this loop, the only way you can get inside the kind of cycles that we move news in. We move news now in minutes. I mean, it used to be days, then it was hours. We're down to minutes where stuff is being sent and updated and sent around the globe. And it was used very effectively. Everything that could have been a giveaway or a leak was very effectively used.
You might understand, Commander, from what you know, that the size of the target that they were aiming at was about the size of a clothes washer. It was just that small a target and they put the bomb right in there?
That is correct.
So my question then is, what did Tom Cruise know, and when did he know it when he filmed Maverick? Because it seems like the plot line to that movie is almost identical to this strike package that went over there.
So, of course, that's one of the funny things that was said about Top Gun Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
If it was such an important mission, why would we go through all the risks that we did with an aircraft carrier and have folks fly close to the Earth like that to make that delivery when you could use a B-2? It would be a very dull movie.
It would. And I heard that the Iranians, I mean, none of the aircraft were ever painted, that they had no clue they were there until there was a loud boom and a flash, and by that time they were gone. I mean, that's just incredible.
There's a couple really fantastic, and anybody who wants to get maybe some better details, I'll be more than happy to send links if they send me an email. There's a couple really great ones out there. I want to get off I'd like to come back to the strike on the second hour a little bit more. But the reason I'm driving on this is it was a very effective use of deception. Sorry, that's the pups letting me know somebody's at the door. My point is, have we honed our skills on UAP/UFO activity? Which came first? Which is the chicken? Which is the egg? And I don't mean egg like in shape of a UFO, but maybe I do. You can't tell at this point in discussion. But which came first? Did we hone this during World War II, Manhattan Project, understand this, and then realized that this was an effective tool, an effective means to control information? Obviously a lot easier. Do we do things on purpose to have hearings or make an announcement like Roswell that says, we got a flying saucer? It was just a couple days ago that the famous flying saucer incident up in Washington State occurred, if I remember correctly. I think it's like the 22nd or 23rd, right, of June, that it was seen. The saucers were seen over the water. Did we learn early on then that we needed something to divert the attention? If you look back at other times in history, there are these kinds of feints that go on. And now, which came first? Does it matter? I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, and you've heard me talk about it for years, that the open source intelligence gathering, by just constantly looking at what is happening on social media, you can fill rooms of people who do nothing but go to chat rooms and see what's going on in chatter and see what's going on things. And now we've made it even easier, right? I mean,
sure.
Back in the days of America Online, AOL, you had to get into the chat room to see what was going on. Now you just go on Twitter, and it's organized for you to pick up any discussion you want to pick up. You can actively put people on there. Mm-hmm. And then if you really want to be exciting, you can actually put subjects into that stream to see where it goes. I remember a few years back when the Pope that just passed away was rumored that he was coming to the United States. Going to make a visit to the United States. And various security and intelligence agencies started to put this discussion out to see what the chatter was, to see where that discussion was rolling, because they wanted to see what urban areas, what areas, who was talking, who was interested, who was showing this up, and where did it go, and where did it tread. My work in Iraq, when we chased down networks, we were more interested who was talking to the phone that we had intercepted and used, as opposed to just the person of the interest. They wanted to see where the rest of the phone calls were going, what cell phone towers were being used. Chris?
Well, I think you've laid it out pretty well. I'm taken by the Wall Street Journal Part 2 article. I think you kind of hit it on the spot. See, the thing I look at from that article, I see not only is the government working disinformation, but private businesses are doing the same now too. And the reason I say that is because in the beginning of the article, they talk about Sean Kilpatrick. Now, they had the ATEP and the Arrow, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. And there was that all big hype to the public. You know, we're creating these organizations to find the truth, find what's going on. But behind the scenes, for what this article says, Sean Kirkpatrick goes to the 6 largest defense contractors and go, does anybody know anything about UFOs? Does anybody know anything about alien technology? You would make my job so much easier. And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll go get back to you on that. So, I mean, you got all this big hype that the government's doing with these disinformation projects, because Sean Kirkpatrick basically says himself he got nowheres with getting information, said to the Senate committee and said, we haven't seen anything that makes us believe there's extraterrestrials are here. We know that's garbage. We also know that you can't foil private companies. So private companies tell Sean Kirkpatrick, you're tough. You're not going to get what you think you're going to get from us, and it ain't going to happen. And Kirkpatrick goes back and goes, well, they said the answer is kind of complicated. Well, what does that mean, complicated? So you're right when you say that the government does it, but also private corporations, when it comes to ufology, does the same thing. They lead you in one direction where you think you're going to get an answer. Then they purposely send you in another direction where you think you're going to get an answer. And basically, if you think about the history of ufology, we're no farther ahead, really. I mean, maybe small baby steps, but we're no farther ahead than where we were, after Roswell.
What do you think, Don?
Well, I'll tell you that over 30 years ago, the Central Intelligence Agency, a spokesman by the name of Gerald Haynes, came out to deflate the saucers. And basically what he said was the government actively, through experimental aircraft, perpetrated the myth of UFOs, because what people were actually seeing were experimental aircraft like the SR-71, the U-2. Now, when I was in Okinawa, before going back to Vietnam, Naha Air Base were routinely flying SR-71s out of Naha. They were going up, skirting the edges of North Vietnam, China, and North Korea, gathering all this intel. And I personally observed a couple of takeoffs of these aircraft. And let me tell you what, they were there and then boom, they were gone. Anybody that knows anything about any of these aircraft know that once they're up and in the stratosphere, you ain't gonna see nothing. And I tried to tell people that back then, but there were a lot of people that wanted to hear those kind of explanations. Oh, well, yeah. Forget aliens, forget ETs. They were really, what we were really seeing were these airplanes. Well, I think everybody here knows that is absolutely not possible. Cobra, you know yourself, when that SR-71 would take off, buddy, she was gone and invisible. Am I wrong or not?
Oh, you're not wrong, but I don't think that applies to all the military aircraft.
No, but that's what Haynes was trying to tell the public.
Sure. I don't disagree with that. I just don't think it was a very well-crafted diversion.
Well, I did say it was CIA.
Well, okay. To all my very good friends that were Christians in action, yes. There were a couple really good ones out there that I work with. I think they would agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was listening today to a program, CEO of one of these leading AI companies, and the subject of deception came up. And it's going to be so important that we get a handle on this new technology, because the prospects for misuse and deception are just astronomical. It's right already. We're so close to not being able to tell what is real and what isn't. And a concern that I have is we have so many people in our government, in our Congress, in our Senate, who I think would have trouble opening an email. And we're trying to explain to them these advanced computers that are coming. and they just don't have any kind of a concept of what it is. But it is something that we're really going to have to watch for. And if we are that close to that technology and are in fact being visited by a highly advanced race, what are their capabilities as far as deception are concerned?
How do you know that AI is not inspired by them or generated or inputted by them? So you bring up an important part. You know, the foundation that's been laid on this is we do not have critical thinking anymore.
No.
We really don't teach people critical thinking. And it's going to be to our great detriment. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, and I'm not slamming individual teachers, but I am slamming the overall parental civic kind of approach that we've taken to education overall, that we do not have critical thinking. And what do I mean by that? When I taught people how to fly aircraft in the military, the reason I gelled so well with the Navy and the Army method of doing it is that they wanted to teach you fundamentals that you absolutely had to know. And then they expected you to start trying to figure out how to connect that in different situations, because there was no way you could be taught for every situation that was going to go on. And of course, the most important thing that was always taught is, how do you maintain control of the airplane, and how do you determine if you are no longer going to be able to fly the aircraft? In the case of airplanes, often it meant that you were going to be able to hit an ejection seat if you had one, or bail out if you had a parachute, or if you were in other airplanes, you had to start preparing to get it back down on the ground. As terrible as a situation that was going to be, you wanted to do it under control as much as possible. We are now in aviation often bumping up against less and less time to mature that kind of process. We're using the precursors to AI to do a lot of the pilot duties, a lot of the fundamental things that are going on, and we're creating aircraft that have interfaces for the pilot to the aircraft to the flight controls. My point being is, as we get dependent in this particular area, we find ourselves now becoming much and more dependent on those systems and what's going on. So if you don't have proper redundancies, or if you keep forgetting that this is man-made, we've created this, that if you have 1,000 lines of code, inevitably you're going to find out you need 1,010 to come up with a new situation that was never able to encounter. And we've taken our brain out of the process more and more. The same thing I see happening across society, but in this particular area, we've been talking about UFOs and things that are going on. I just had a very interesting discussion with someone about Ezekiel's wheel. Early biblical Old Testament or First Testament, depending on how you like to refer to it, reference to these UAPs in the Old Testament are flying there. And descriptions of how they flew, what they look like, other ones coming out of it, this event. But unfortunately, it's only a couple sentences. And of course, we want paragraphs, right? We want pages. We want a chapter on that alone just to try to understand it. We are finding ourselves more and more in this area that if you can throw a couple sentences out, you're going to get a lot of attention, because that's really the data byte that we're down to now. And it's going to be used as much negatively as it is positively. Don, what do you think about my synopsis there?
Well, I think you're right on the money, Commander. And you see, that's the problem with so-called researchers today. The majority of them have absolutely no concept what has gone on before. And in ancient times, all right, if you go back, you scour the documents, you scour actually today rather archaic history books and other things, you will find that not only were people seeing them, but people like Alexander the Great, when he was carrying on his campaign through Persia, there were occurrences where they talked about flaming shields in the sky that swooped down and basically stampeded Alexander's animals. In the Pharaonic texts, ancient Egypt talked about seeing these things. So these were not, a one-off. And as how many people actually observed and for how long, I have no idea. But it's funny, as time moved along, now we're still seeing them today. And we especially see them in areas of conflict. They seem drawn to areas of conflict, like what's happening right now in the Middle East. Several years ago, I think it was about 8, 10, maybe 11 years ago, did you guys see those videos that came out of Israel where something was flying around the dome of the rock?
Oh, yeah.
And shooting up and down? Okay.
Yeah.
Those were the kind of things those people were seeing. But in today's news media, that may last a day or two, and then zoop, we're off to something else. But yeah, you're right, Commander. They have been around since time immemorial.
Dan, before I jump to you, I want to just interject one quick comment here. And I want to let the audience know I am checking the comments and the questions that you've posed in there about the strike. We'll probably jump into on the second hour of the show, the last part of the show. You talk about the written text, the records, the inscribed part. And to me, that is a very important base issue in this entire discussion. And we're all guilty of it. I don't particularly like Amazon, but I am an Amazon junkie. I can't, and I'll tell you why. And I am sure that I am just as much a victim. There are certain political stances, causes that a corporation will make, and I will not want to use those retail stores. So I go to Amazon. But think about that. Oh, what a good boy Commander Cobra is. He's boycotting and he's making a statement. And I don't think Mr. Bezos and I would agree on much, except that him and I probably like some of the same whiskeys, although he would look probably down his nose at me a little bit until he tasted some of the finer whiskeys that I have found that don't cost well. But he would, at first would probably look at me, and I would have shown him how to survive that little episode in Venice. I actually kind of feel kind of bad for the guy with the nonsense that went on there. My point is, we go to the internet for everything. Mm-hmm. Who writes the internet? Very few places are scanning the books into the internet. They're out there, but they're not the first thing that comes up on the first 5, 6, 10 pages of an internet search, unless you know how to load up the particular thing you're looking for. What I'm talking about is in the age when the written word, the recorded record, even though it was flawed and even though people threw their in there, those were researched to some degree books, and you could read them and then you could critic. What we're doing now is we're not critically analyzing, unless it's, of course, my esteemed colleagues here that are on the show with me tonight and the enlightened audience that listens to us and corresponds with us. But in general, we go to the internet for a conclusion. What's the first thing that happens now when you go on the internet? Anybody who's listening to the show, do it right now and open up another window. If you're on your computer and put into the AI, Gemini, or whatever one, ChatGPT, and write something about UAPs or UAP event in Israel, UAP event, and you're going to get a synopsis in about what? Less than 4 or 5 seconds. It'll ask you if you want more or less, deeper or not, and it's going to regurgitate back. And then when you make that first key input to the questions that it puts out to you, it's going to now know exactly where to go to shape the discussion.
7 seconds.
You're going to get a bunch of conclusions that AI thinks you want to look at. or AI wants you to look at because that's what it feels is the best response at this point. It's not the way we approached scholarly activities. It's not the way we approached science in the past. And it sure as heck is a direct, what I think is one of the greatest crises that we have, is that we do not have what I consider the type of journalism I grew up with, where people had to really back up the things that they wrote. And when they got caught cheating, when they got caught plagiarizing, they were embarrassed. Now it's a promotion.
Yep.
That's
they don't have to defend
in the UAP world. That is happening terribly. I think back to each one of us got a copy of Don and Vicky's magazine.
Mm-hmm.
If before I had it framed, I read that magazine. First, I started with the ads because the ads alone told me so much about the times that we were in. And it was a huge part of how you got a magazine published, right? I mean, Don, if you didn't have the advertising, it sure as hell wasn't just subscriptions that was keeping that thing afloat, right?
That's correct.
So, but I read those articles and I read the part that was fact, and I could tell what the writer was trying to tell me, what the reporter was trying to tell me, what they thought this was going to. I don't have that anymore. I have to look at 5 or 6 things.
Mm-hmm. You know, when I was in college back in the 70s, I took a course in journalism.
I was in high school. I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
And at the time, I was a teenager, but I had broken into the media early, and so I was doing weather on the.
I was a cop then.
CBS affiliate in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the professor of journalism was lamenting, and he said, "You people here are in a transitionary period." He said, "Once upon a time, a journalist went out of their office, circulated in the community, got to know people, got to establish contacts, bought a cop some coffee and a donut, went to the fire station, got to know the guys, and plugged himself into the community. And if you were to ask someone why they were doing what they were doing in journalism, they would say that the public has a right to know what's going on, and I'm here to report what I see." And he warned us, and he said, right now, and we're talking about right around 1980, there's a shift coming that I'm very concerned about. Because he says more and more people who come into this class and say they're going to be journalists, when I say, "Why do you want to be a journalist?" their answer was, "I want to make a difference." Now, there is a big world of difference between those two perspectives.
Sure.
When a person says, "I want to make a difference," that's really telling you a lot about that person. They're telling you it's about them. They're telling you that they're more concerned with getting noticed, standing out. If you wanted to really condense it down psychologically, they're saying, "I want to be relevant." And then their career is a quest to be relevant. And having worked in many TV and radio newsrooms in the course of my day, I will tell you that, let's say 10 young aspiring journalists come into a TV station. There might be 1 or 2 who are willing to put in the time and the effort that I described earlier. And the rest are there just coasting, trying to grab the easy stories, taking the easy way out just to get something on the air so they can move on to the next highest market. Now, when we look at the technology that we have today, it's even happening in the churches, maybe happening in the synagogues and temples, I don't know, but many pastors now are having AI write their sermons for them. And just to experiment with it, I went to, it was ChatGPT at the time. Now I use Grok mainly. And I said, okay, you kind of know me by now from the types of questions. I say,
listen to yourself the way you just phrased that.
Which one? What? Saying to the thing?
You know me now.
Yeah, you know me now. And see, that's what they're trained to do. It does.
It does know you now.
I said, write me a 10-minute sermon on such and such a perspective from this scripture. And it came back and I read it and my jaw dropped because darn it, it was good, and it looked like something I would have written.
Did you write it? Did you use it?
I did not, and I never would, because it's eliminating the spirit there.
I'm gonna make a little funny. That is the devil in the effing details right there. That's why you can't use it.
There it is. But I'll tell you how I do use AI as a pastor, and it is, dare I say, a godsend. Do you all know what a concordance is?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah,
of course.
For our viewers who might not know, a concordance is a reference book, and if you're looking at a Bible and you say, okay, I want to look at all the verses that deal with, let's say, crucifixion, and you can open it up and you can look for the word cross, and it'll have all listed there in black and white, all the different Bible passages that have that word in it. Whereas if I'm working on a sermon and I'm thinking about a line, and I'll say into Grok, and I'll say, what are the Bible verses that deal with, and then whatever the subject is. And it saves me the time of having to go take out this big, heavy book and sort through it and find each page, because they all come out right there. And then I can look them up in the Bible. And if I'm really wanting to impress myself with the thing, I'll say, okay, now print out the text of all of these in the King James Version or in the New International Version. And it'll all come out like that. Now let's extrapolate that into the workforce and into the future. You have more and more ways that work is going to become more efficient. But with that is going to be the temptation to cut corners. And you're talking about erasing people's ability to try to find solutions up here and relying too much on the machine to find it for them. And we had a problem here in a local high school where kids were starting to go and ask the ChatGPT to write a term paper for them.
Sure.
And then I mentioned, well, the way the teacher gets around that is she logs on to ChatGPT, scans in the text and says, did you write this? And ChatGPT will come back and say, yep, that's one of mine. And so that's how you catch the kid. So there are ways around.
Apparently that doesn't work for the presidents of major universities, but
yeah, you're right. But to get back to what you were saying earlier about the loss of critical thinking, I often wonder what would happen to us if we were hit, God forbid, by, say, an EMP weapon and sent back to pre-technology age in parts of our country.
We'd lose a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. They wouldn't know a thing about how to survive off the land or how, what to do and what not to do. Because all of that's been done for them. They're helpless. And I read somewhere that within 3 months, 80 to 90% of the U.S. population would be dead because of the inability to do that. And of course, not being able to get medications, not being able to go anywhere, being too out of shape to walk to the nearest river, get some water, purify it. I mean, it just compounds itself.
Chris, what are you thinking up there?
Well, the Padre had something that really, I thought it was great what he said, but he said something about journalism. I want to start right there. Journalism, to me, was supposed to be reporting the facts. The old Joe Friday saying, just the facts. And that's what journalism should be on the fence. That's all how journalism was in the past. However, for some reason, it started going to opinionations, where they can.
The editorial page has become the entire periodical or the entire presentation. And
so when you now see journalism, it targets a certain audience, the right wing, the left wing, my opinionated shows. I remember walking into a room one time and it was filled with people and they were all watching Bill O'Reilly. And we got to watch Bill O'Reilly. We got to watch it. And it was like, as much as I like Bill O'Reilly, it wasn't a news thing. It was an opinionated show. And I think ufology has found it going into that, where Absolutely. People have become opinionated and entertaining. Now, when I started in ufology, and I know Don believes in this too, You wanted the facts. You wanted the truth. You didn't want anybody to elaborate or go off on some wild tangent about blue chickens fighting in Jupiter. Because well, it's true. I mean, let's face it. There's charlatans.
Well, I mean, to be
fair,
fair, there were people out there, Chris, that did have a shtick because they were making money on this early on.
Exactly. And that's my point.
They kind of did research. And we have personality. We have personalities. We've had them on this show that are very entertaining. But I will say those entertaining people, like Don himself, have done actual work in the past. They have a body of presented information. They have put out books, articles, or shows,
magazines, right? But here's the difference between a person like Don and other people is Don will defend his position.
And Don loves it when we talk about him in the third person when he says,
"Oh, I know he doesn't."
He absolutely loves it.
But the thing is with Don and others that I think are very respected ufologists, they will defend their positions, and they will give you the facts, and they will say to you, "I don't know about that," or "That's something that I'm not familiar with," instead of trying to make something that's elaborate and entertaining. Where we have all seen it with some ufologists, that you could tell the people who are very good at giving facts that people enjoy listening to, and then there's the ones that embellish so much you kind of go, "Where is this guy coming from?" And so I believe the same thing comes from the government with ufology, and the same thing. They either downplay the story so much where you say, "You guys are ridiculous. There's so much evidence out there." Like, for instance, when the first thing the government said with Arrow and ATIP, we're not going to investigate anything after 1955, I think it was, 1950 or 1955. Well, we were just talking about ancient stuff, and the government said, we're not even going to look at that. Well, there's your proof right there, because nobody had that technology back then. Fires in the sky and, wars in the sky and this happening and people seeing all these things, and nobody wants to research that. I mean, that should be one of the main things you should be focusing on.
Well, so when I first decided, back in the late 80s, that I wanted to pursue this on a professional level, I haunted libraries and bookstores, used bookstores, for a good 6+ months, grabbing everything I could grab, going back at least to the Second World War to research and find out what the heck, was out there in the field. And there were a lot of things that today people probably have never even heard of, like the ghost rocket phenomenon.
All over the northern part of Norway and Sweden and Denmark, right?
Exactly. Yes. And so anyway, here I was jumping into this, and my guiding light at that time were a couple of people. Major Don Kehoe, USMC retired, had been a pilot. Of course, by this time, Kehoe had already died. Richard Hall, who had been Kehoe's administrative assistant, and I got to know Dick Hall pretty darn well, and a guy by the name of Ivan Sanderson. I don't know if you guys may or may not recognize his name, but during the Second World War, he had been in British intelligence, I think MI6, but at any rate, this guy had done some amazing work on especially what today we would classify as cryptid encounters. Now, these guys were at the top of the heap as far as I was concerned. Now, having said that, and having been the director of research for UFO Magazine, and having said that, and my radio, I started broadcasting in 1991, all right? I was actually I'm not bragging about this, it's simply a fact.
You can brag.
I was doing UFOs before Art Bell was. Art Bell was still doing political talk radio on satellite. All right. Now, with all that being said, one would think that when things like the MUFON symposiums, with all the years of my background, that I would occasionally be an uninvited guest. Never happened. Never. And I wondered about that. Not that I'm anxious. As a matter of fact, today I doubt I'd even bother accepting an invitation to go out and speak. But
you can take mine.
I did. Yeah.
I wasn't even asked.
But MUFON made the decision through its former founder and director of international investigations, Walt Andrus, that I would never be invited to MUFON. Why? Well, in 1989, John Lear was the director for MUFON for the state of Nevada. 89 is when they had their infamous symposium where Bill Moore, okay, you may have heard about this, went in and admitted working hand in glove with military intelligence and knowingly presented fraudulent documents to a civilian scientist by the name of Paul Benowitz.
All right, Don, I'm going to grab you. We're going to carry this over to the next hour. We're coming up against our first and really only hard break.
How do I always do that?
Because you don't look at the clock and you don't track our little inner show commentary that's going on, giving some of the secrets behind the curtain. You're listening to UAP Crossfire on KGR Radio DB. I'm with Chris DiPerno, Dan the Padre Carlson, Don Ecker, who's explaining why he's no longer allowed to attend the MUFON tea parties, apparently. And Commander Cobra will be back in about 3.5 minutes to hear the rest of the story. Well, welcome back to UAP Crossfire. Don was taking us through basically the exclusion of you by MUFON. Why don't you back up a little bit and retract that?
Sure. In 1989, MUFON held their international symposium down in Nevada. And that was the year that John Lear, son of Bill Lear, of Lear Sigler Jet, and a very renowned commercial pilot in his own right, okay?
Absolutely.
Was the director for MUFON. So at that time, I had gotten tied up in a very actually discomforting investigation that went on for about 3, almost 4 years, dealing with, and thank God it wasn't as huge as I initially thought it might be, human mutilations. Now, at that time, cattle mutilations was a huge phenomenon that people were really all over the United States, hell, even in my home state of Pennsylvania. And not only cattle, but other animals, horses, in some cases, dogs, bears, deer out in the wilderness that were discovered mutilated. So it was a very discomforting thing. And the director of MUFON for the state I was then living in, a gentleman by the name of Don Mason, brought to my attention a case involving what could only have been a human mute. So I started investigating this. And through I still had a lot of law enforcement contacts. I contacted some of them, ended up getting a couple of them in big trouble because I had them tap into the NCIC back in DC database for a certain set of criteria. Now, with that being said, I got a call from Lear, and Lear was aware that I was doing this. And he said, would you be interested in coming down to Vegas and presenting your research? Now, this was on a Sunday, and it became known as the Alternative Conference. So I said I would, and upon landing in Vegas, as I'm entering the hotel lobby, I noticed, and one thing I try to do is keep complete control of my situational awareness. I saw these three guys standing there, and a couple of them were eyeballing me as I walked up to.
Well, you are an attractive man, but we'll set that aside for the fact of the story.
Well, okay. I appreciate that, Deuce. I appreciate that. So I get up there and I give the guy my name and I want to get my hotel key. And this short, older man walked up to me and he said, "Are you Don Eckert?" And I looked at him. I smiled. I said, "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" And I stuck my hand out to shake his hand. He said, "My name is Walter Andrus. I'm the international director of MUFON. And I'm here to tell you that if you speak at this conference, you will never in your life again ever get an invitation from MUFON." Now, not only was I doing my own investigation, but I was also the director of research for UFO Magazine. Now, normally in a case like that, I would have hit him with a blue stream of profanity. But here we are.
And it's so unlike you on anything I've seen that would have happened.
You must have had fever that day.
It didn't happen that day. So I said, "Okay, fine." Well, no, there were people all around. I didn't want to get
jet lag. It's that old LA to Vegas jet lag.
Yeah.
They had COVID back then?
No. I think they had chicken pox, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so I take my key and I go up to my room. And now I'm thinking to myself, well, you ignorant son of a bitch. I wouldn't have stopped giving that talk if they would have brought wild horses up. So I ended up doing it. And make a long story short, then it seemingly invitations started to dry up. And now I did get two from LA MUFON, and that was primarily to speak about my research I was conducting on lunar transient phenomenon and weird things on the moon. But later, a very close friend of mine who knew the guys in the audio-visual department of MUFON. Now remember, MUFON, they're the people using the scientific method, right? To investigate flying saucers, UAPs, UFOs. Well, maybe not so much, because this guy told my friend, he said, look, he said, the reason they don't invite Don here, okay, for LA MUFON, other than the moon thing, is very simple. MUFON depends upon putting asses in the seats at 10, 15, or 20 bucks a clip. Okay, they want to hear stories. Okay, they don't want the facts. And MUFON proved that, for example, in 2017, when they brought Andrew Basagio in and Corey Good, along with people like Richard Dolan. And who was Basagio? Well, he was the guy that claimed he went to Mars in the early 80s with a very young Barack Obama, okay, to see the alien facilities there. And Corey Good was the clown that was the interstellar soldier fighting blue chickens or whatever the hell it was on Mars. So, they would bring those guys in, but they don't want to hear the facts. So anybody that tells me that they're interested in getting the factual information about UFOs, well, gentlemen, I just have one thing to say. Okay, and this is from me, my own opinion. Bullshit.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Your nightly dose of profanity from Don Eckert.
Well, now bullshit's not really that much profanity. I could get profane, Padre, but
well, I know.
I'm trying to cut back.
There's levels.
Yes.
And I'm not quite sure we've even scratched the surface. But since you have piped up the ecumenical perspective here at this point, what did you think in this article that's come out? What did you draw out of this? Because I obviously we're all very varied persons here, but we tend to have a core agreement on a lot of things. I think I can say that we all agree that many of the phenomena that we talk about are interconnected. I think that we would say that there is a very likely opportunity that what these articles are talking about are very factual, that people, I mean, just the recent events in the last 72 hours, I think explain, we started the show out kind of talking about it, that there are good reasons to use deception. But there are many people that are going to use deception, that are going to use that technique, that ability to drive certain outcomes and results. Chris, you asked me off air what I thought of the Intel report. And I'm going to make a very funny pronouncement here, and I'm looking forward to hearing each one of you respond to this. You asked me specifically about the leaked report. Number one, the person or persons who leaked the top secret report need to go to jail.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, they better be very cautious, because I think they may actually have taken the bait. I think somebody may have set them up to find out where there are still people who do not hold their oath that they have taken to do the work they're doing, because they dislike the present president of the United States. Now, I don't want to get on the political thing here, but I want to bring this next point in.
Well,
hold on.
Okay.
If Donald Trump, president of the United States, number 47, comes out tomorrow or this week, I ask him to make he's already made one pronouncement on UFO UAPs. I want him to come out and just make a pronouncement. He believes him, he doesn't believe him. Because whatever it is, a large part of the so-called media is going to do, they're going to turn over everything they can to prove he is wrong.
Right. Agree.
If he says that they are real, you will see stuff that we have dreamed about seeing show up. If he comes out and says they're absolutely not real, nothing is being hidden, they'll take the paint off the walls to do anything they can to disprove it. And the part that it makes me laugh, again, I don't care, love, hate the guy. It's not the part I'm trying to make. We're at such a rabid point that they can't see that they're actually, their own insanity is being used against them. Now, to the broader part, I'll let you react to it now. I sometimes think that's what's happening with us in the UFO, UAP, paranormal world.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And let me just say this, that when off air, when I asked you the question about, because I'm a ground pounder, let's face it, I'm not, I've never flew a plane. I don't know anything about aircrafts. I'm a Marine. I could tell you how to set up an ambush like Don can. I could tell you how how a squad works, these and all that other stuff, but I can't tell you anything about planes. So when you see a report that they first said wasn't leaked, it was just, we got this report from a leaker that they put out like that the bombs didn't do this damage like the president says. But then they were smart enough to be so transparent. They said, here's the pictures, here's what we did, here's how we did it. And they kind of laid out the entire way this thing was demolished. But the problem is that the media is so tainted nowadays, you don't know to believe them or not believe them. And even one of the people in chat said, hey, Commander, the media is saying this thing. Do we believe him or not believe him? Well, it's the same thing. There's certain media stations I won't even turn on now. And it doesn't matter, even if it's not ufology. Even with ufology, there's stuff where people said, oh, for instance, let's talk about the egg that Ross Cohart had. How many people came out? I watched people come out and say, I'm a helicopter pilot. That never happened. That's never the way something is. And I have other people saying that's exactly how it's done. You don't know who to believe. I mean, that's the way the media has been bouncing around. So when you say, okay, I'm the kind of person I'd like to go to a person who has knowledge, somebody like you, Commander, that has flown planes all his professional career, where I haven't gotten behind the cockpit of one. However, I think it's just so tainted, the media is, what Padre was saying, that they will do anything to make people look terrible, not just the president, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, everything of that nature. Well, it's the same thing in ufology. These people, they actually attack each other. And they try to make a point where I'll lie in order to downgrade this person when he's really trying to be just a decent person.
Listen to what Don just passed to us. What happened to him?
Yeah. Oh,
The
yeah.
ultimatum. You do
Right.
this,
And
this
I
is going to
remember.
happen.
Listen, I'm a state director in MUFON. Did you see me? I'm going to get fired after this program, but I mean, did you see me jump up and say, you're going crazy on MUFON. How dare you do that? I'm sitting here going, Yeah. I mean, I can't.
I can only tell you the truth, buddy. I wouldn't.
Well,
I wouldn't lie about
that's
that.
one thing. That's the one thing ufologists have got to get back to, is the truth. Because the problem is people want soft facts nowadays and be entertained rather than the cold, hard facts. Like, I agree with Commander when he says, hey, I think those Tic Tacs are ours. I believe it. I absolutely believe it. I did some research. But you got people out there, they're extraterrestrial, they're interdimensional, they're here to do whatever, drink our blood, eat us for prime rib. I don't know. But I mean, that's exactly what some people will come out and say. And just like when you talk about certain things in ufology, when you put out that wonderful paper and said, hey, there's something nefarious to this, I believe it. Why would you keep something so cool? If the president went out, like Commander said tomorrow and out on the lawn and said, yeah, they're here, so what? Half of the people would just be turning over their burgers on the barbecue. Oh, okay, whatever.
All right, so let me lay this out. I want to talk about the famous Orson Welles radio broadcast of War of the Worlds. It's very instructive to what we're talking about. He made a very casual announcement that this was a radio play, but then the whole thing was presented as actual news. And he adopted the local areas. In fact, I think the story goes that they threw darts at a map of the metro New York City area to get the locations where the Martians were landing. Okay, my dad, who just turned 87, was a little baby when this was out, and the neighbor came over to the apartment in New York City, in Flushing, Queens, banged on the door, said to my dad's father, my grandfather, Artie, get the kid. The Martians have landed. People were getting into cars. People were going out. I'm going to fast forward that now to COVID. COVID may be one of the most instructive things where we're at. Why was that so effective? Because radio had become the absolute zenith of communication in the 30s. For entertainment, for news, for the orientation that people used. COVID used the internet as the way to convey all the truth and all the lies. And now
some of those lies were nefarious.
Absolutely. It's partially one of the reasons that I ended my Griffin Skymaster Griffin Task Force Griffin show, because of the kind of pounding I was getting, saying, just step back. This is not making sense. This looks like a weapon. This looks like something that if it was an accident, it was an accident because it was a weapon that got away from them. There's just things did not add up in that at all. And you just saw what went on with that. And
you saw how the federal government went out of their way to censor any discussion about that. And went to big tech and got them to comply with the censoring.
Absolutely.
Facebook and all these other places. Before Twitter became X, all right? They were doxing people. They threw the president of the United States off.
Right. So you bring to me the point that I think that you look at this, and now what the Padre brought up earlier, this AI creation that is entering our sphere, and it's none of this is done in linear, it's logarithmic, right? The distance may be the same between events, but the amount of time to get that distance is either shortened, or in the same amount of time we've covered a much greater advancement. And we are not getting ahead. But think about the generation of college grads, high school students, and middle school children, not to mention the ones that were even younger than that, in masks, not being able to see faces, the school that they lost, the kinds of controls and conflicts that went on. And then I come back to looking at what we're talking about in UAP phenomena.
Look, now, the one thing, let me
as John Burroughs says, we're weaponizing it. I'm sorry, Don, go ahead.
Just very quickly. But it came out almost immediately. Fauci came out and said that this virus was so tiny that masks would not stop it. But they insisted everybody wear a mask. So you know what I did? I got pissed off at that. I got a couple of coffee filters and duct tape. And when I went out, I wore the coffee filters and duct tape. And I waited for somebody to say something to me. Well, nobody did.
Can I say something? That's the craziest shit I've ever heard.
Hold on one sec. Go ahead, Padre.
I was just going to get back to the intent and tying some of this to the spiritual and the sociological makeup of individuals. What is the purpose of a deceptive communication? Anybody? Okay.
Well, to deceive you.
Okay. But what you're hoping is to elicit a response from the intended target of the message in order to manipulate their behavior. So this strike that we carried out, we had deception, we had some deceptive messages with the intent of deceiving the enemy into taking or not taking certain courses of action. When the government is deceiving its own people, it's doing so to manipulate behavior. So really what this comes down to is a control issue. Our culture has changed so much just in the course of my lifetime. You guys are roughly my age, maybe a little younger, but you remember a time when sticks and stones may break my bones, names will never hurt me, and now we've got people winning multi-million-dollar lawsuits because somebody said something that hurt their feelings or made them feel unsafe. Well, we've taught this whole generation coming up that what matters most is how they feel about things and how they feel about themselves. But out there is a big, mean world that doesn't give a rip about your feelings. And we've placed ourselves in danger in that regard. Now, within the so-called UFO community, which I think, if we're honest, we'll say it is also fractured. There's this discussion of what's it going to do to people like me who are so-called religious. I don't like that word, but anyway, is the truth about the UAP situation going to destroy the faith or destroy the church and so forth? Well, what if it's the other way around? I mean, what if, and I'm just throwing this out there, what if it turns out that this is a demonically inspired, satanically controlled sort of a thing. And what's that going to do to all the people who have placed their faith and trust in, say, Space Brothers? They're going to come and save us. Yeah. No matter which way this goes on disclosure, there are people who are going to be upset. As the commander has said, we must get back to a place where we can critically think. And it is incumbent upon us to teach our children and our grandchildren how to think critically, because they're not going to get it anywhere else. I can tell you that. And if we don't do that, and they simply grow up believing that it's all about them and all about how they feel and what their rights are that aren't even enumerated rights in their Constitution, we're just going to destroy ourselves. And for the people in the UAP community, I know that some are distressed that here's this evangelical pastor who's part of this panel. He's so narrow-minded, and on about the Bible and sort of things like that. Well, let's have a discussion. Let's just sit down as intelligent adults and exchange our positions without getting so emotional. And then going and recording our emotional outburst and putting it on social media and getting everybody else upset about it. We got to stop sniping at each other. That's my sermon for the evening.
I also would tell folks to pick up your books, Padre, to see how narrow-minded you are.
Pretty wild.
Look, the reason I touch upon this is that radio, and I know the whole COVID thing upsets people, and it's still there. But what upsets me the most out of that situation was you could, and Don, you brought it up. You brought it to the absolute apex. Censoring, censures, doxing, the new word, but the ostracization of people around this is such a destructive force. And there was such a bloodlust during that period. What I wanted to know what was going on was my older parents, they were definitely the ones at risk. Should I go see them? Okay, or not see them, because I was in contact with so many other people out in the world. You couldn't get information on that, and it was driving on. And then when you put your hand up to go, well, 2 weeks ago you said this, what's changed that's had you put out this new guideline? That's what throws it off. That's what gets us in trouble. That's why I ask people to really support KGRA. Hopefully WCOR comes back, or KCOR rather comes back online, and the other independent stations that are out there presenting these. No one here is forcing you to do that. You can call me any name you want. It's probably justified 9 out of 10 times. But the point that I'm going to ask you is, hear me out, and I will hear you out. Mm-hmm. That's why I love when people send the emails, especially the ones where they say, hey, you said this and I'm not sure you're right, or I'm not sure this went the way it did. And I will do everything I can to back it up. And I'll tell you why I got to the conclusion. I don't sit in judgment of a lot of folks, but I do expect that we're going to look at this. And if it doesn't add up, I need you to tell me what it is. Because as the Padres will speak, and I am in the same crowd, a lot of the things that I do are based on faith in a belief of a particular superior being and a particular way that superior being has interacted with the human race. And I can't do much better than point to old documents that are written up and personal experience and point to other people's personal experiences. If you think about it, it really does code me to be someone that should be very supportive when people are explaining what they have experienced.
Yes.
And it has in the past. I have met people that I know something has happened to them. I don't know what it is. They believe that this is what's happened. Encounters with extraterrestrials, encounter with paranormal phantasms, demons. I have no grounds to doubt them any more than they should have grounds to doubt me. But we need to be able to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And when you're telling me it's settled, it's not.
No, you're right.
And then the last part is I need to see the consistency in your how you're living this. Okay? Love or hate Don. Don has a body of physical evidence that he has put to print, to the record, you can go and look at.
Yes,
exactly.
Okay? That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
And so I would put this challenge out to everybody who's listening or watching tonight. How much of what you believe about anything is based on what somebody's told you or what you have read about, researched, tested, and come to your own conclusion on?
Or experienced and concluded.
Right. Yeah. So that should tell you something.
Chris, you got that look.
I'm not sure. You know, I absolutely believe that ufology is at a turning point where it's either going to go right down the tubes or we're going to revive it and do some serious scientific work. And I'm concerned about it because what we're seeing is not a lot of younger people picking this up. And that kind of concerns me. If you notice, it's the same people telling the same stories. And yes, you do get a guy like David Grush, and that's great. And you do get some guy from the State Department. That's great. But there's not as many people who are trying to challenge that. They're taking stuff verbatim, but they're not as interested anymore. And I don't know if the government has dumbed down people on the subject, where we've gone to this congressional hearing and we say, geez, how many times we heard a congressional hearing and then afterwards go, that was really a waste of time. Or we have another congressional hearing where the guy goes, there's nothing that shows me there's extraterrestrials there. So they build up these hearings and they build up all these things that they're going to do for a month at a time. And then it just drops like a lead balloon. There's nothing there. And I think it's done on purpose to dumb us down. I really do. Okay, 60% of the population, I think it was 60%, believe there's other life. There's something out there, whether it's extraterrestrial, interdimensional, demonic, nefarious. I personally think, that there's something out there that's not good. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my personal belief, and I'll put it right out there. I think there's something nefarious. If there were extraterrestrials here to help us, to be the so kind people they are, they haven't done crap for us.
Well, you don't know that.
Well, I don't see the water getting cleaned up. I don't see the air getting cleaned up. I don't see them coming down and saying, hey, we can cure cancer for you. I mean,
or
I'm not
a better
saying...
mousetrap.
What?
Or a better mousetrap.
Well, yeah, okay. I mean,
there's that, Don. You're right.
Yeah. But I mean, I haven't seen anything where they have done something to make us better, to make us turn maybe a corner where we enlighten ourselves to be better people.
All right. So I want you to point to something that your parents did, Chris, to make you better.
How about a strap across the fanny?
Okay.
That may be a damn better person.
So that was the only way that you got better is when you had corporal punishment. My point is,
I don't consider it corporal punishment. I consider it. I won't say an ass whooping, but I could consider it. Hey, I better not do that again.
Corrective discipline.
We can, very strict discipline or martial discipline. I was trying to be somewhat, eloquent because I don't want to offend any more people with my talk as I am today.
You're not offending anybody.
Trying to class it up just a teeny tiny bit.
Toughen up, buddy. Toughen up.
My point is, we may not know, because I'm going to throw this on its side a little bit. People say this all the time. I just want to see God make something happen in my life.
I've seen it.
Well, that's good that you've recognized it, but I don't recognize it all the times until I stop and look back and realize in my own personal viewpoint, you know what? All that complaining I was doing or all those things, I really was deliberate. I really did get guidance. I did really get what I asked for. It just wasn't what I was asking for. I got what I needed.
Right.
Yeah.
To phrase the Rolling Stones song.
Or it's what you're saying, Commander. Would we recognize it if they did?
Correct.
Okay. So let's look at things from a critical perspective. You've used the analogy of COVID. You know, I had some health issues that would have put me at a higher risk of it, and I was concerned initially. But I applied critical thinking to when they were telling me that I could not go and hold a service in my church, but it was okay for people to go burn down Minneapolis St. Paul and riot and loot and do all that unmasked without doing anything about it. If they were that concerned about the spread of a deadly disease.
How about a strip joint?
Well, that's what I was going to say, Chris. I don't understand why the Padre and others in his profession weren't going to liquor stores and strip joints and holding services.
Yeah,
well, those places were allowed to be open,
one of those places.
And I got in trouble when I asked the question, how come it works there, but it doesn't work here?
You know, I admit to a failing there. You're right. I missed an evangelism opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yes. But I guess you
and
have
strip joints do show God's glorious creations.
Well,
there's
part
that
of this,
too, Don.
I will test that with Angel.
Well, let's move from the discussion of heavenly bodies to the deception issue and what is going to perhaps bring us down as a country if we're not careful. We need more than ever to recognize when we're being manipulated. And the only way that we will be able to do that is if we stop and think before we react. I mean, how many of us have done a wonderful little post we put together for Facebook or YouTube or whatever, and we didn't think before we hit the send button. And the next thing you know, somebody's taken it differently in a way it wasn't intended, and a whole thing blows up that could have been stopped if you just reread what you'd written before you hit send.
Or I'm going to add, Padre, the person that had the reaction maybe needed to read what you wrote more than once.
Yes.
Maybe not draw the conclusion right off the bat.
Yep. The majority of the people today get their news from social media. And how do they get their news? They read the headline and maybe the first sentence. And
go right to the comments.
Yeah. And that's the extent of their research or their study. And that's going to kill us if we're not careful.
I think it's had an incredible detrimental impact on UAPs and UFOs. Because when you throw things out, you know, this is the moment of disclosure. We're at that point. You know, we've had many friends from the show, on the show, that were at the congressional hearings, you know, got in line, listen to this, believe we're at the point of it coming to come forward. And I applaud every person that has testified and has stood there. But not everything that I heard was adding up and making sense to me.
Well, I always maintained that those hearings were nothing much more than a dog and pony show. Okay. Now, had you ever traveled to Southeast Asia, you probably know what I'm talking about. Now, with that being said, okay, my paper, I described in excruciating detail why I believe it will never be disclosed, whatever that thing is. I mean, my God, ladies and gentlemen, there are elements of the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln that are still classified. The man was murdered in 1865 during the month of April. And there are elements of that are under strict classification protocols. Now, would you please tell me why that is?
That's weird.
That's a good question. I never knew that, Don.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you use that measure, Don, which you and I have often talked about, if you can't get that one, if the files can't open on that one, when you tell me you're going to open the files on anything that's happened in the last 100 years, I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying that the people that control the archive, that control the file, are going to let that go unless it can work to the advantage for the moment or the long term that they want to play. And that is what drives me crazy about the situation where we are with the UAP. And the people that have, I think, very honestly and earnestly stood up to talk about their experience. I think if you gave most of them a polygraph, they would pass. I think they saw things. I think they read reports. But I'm very concerned about the validity of what was given to them or what they looked at. And I'll go one step further. Chris, you brought it up before we came on the show. I still think there's a somewhat bait situation that went on with this disclosure, this top secret document that was used. It was thrown out. The people that did receive it only cherry picked out what they wanted to do, and they did not realize by not really looking at the whole document, because what I've seen about this whole document that's come out is we were eavesdropping on the conversations that the Iranian military were sending up their line, and no one in the Iranian military wants to say we're getting our ass kicked. So what they were saying was, oh, everything is great. They're missing the targets. This isn't happening. And because they know that if they let the guys on top, the mullahs on top, they just don't have a really affirming care plan in Iran. I think everybody would agree with that they're probably not the most benevolent of governments going on. So you're going to say up the line what needs to be said to keep your neck connected to the rest of your body. So
I will say,
you throw that out there, and you don't read the whole thing, and you don't read that it's a low confidence report. And I think some people fell in a trap.
I think you could be right, because when we went on break, I quickly looked at something up, and they actually came out and said that the report was leaked is the first report. And they said, we never take the first report as verbatim, as accurate. It's always a low accurate report. Possibly, like you said, they actually said that at the press conference. I didn't see it today, but I did pick it up there, and I go, holy cow. So maybe it was to find some moles that they couldn't find before, and they go, now we know who's leaking this stuff. Because I mean, obviously that's a bait and trap kind of thing, to put the bait out there, and let's see who's leaking it to the news articles. I think you're spot on. After I read what they said during the report, that they actually said that was a low estimate report. They said that they don't put much stuff into that credibility of that report.
Well, the president let's slip something today. I don't know that Israel's very happy with him, but
I don't think that again, if people think what you're going to say is a really big leap, I'm a little bit sad. But go ahead. I'm pretty sure I know what it is. Let's put it this way: does one of the nouns you're going to use start with the letter M?
Yes. Okay,
go right ahead.
That Mossad had people at the site after the bombing and reported on the amount of destruction they saw. Okay,
so anyone who's surprised by that, yeah, it may have been a little bit more. The Israelis have said they had Mossad in there. My God, they set up shop with the Iranian resistance. They put their model airplanes, otherwise known as drones, their UASs, talk about UAP phenomena. Can you imagine what those people were thinking?
Mars invasion.
I'm in my bedroom. I'm safe in my bedroom, and something comes flying through the window and takes me out. So to be surprised by that, to be surprised that they have that going on, I don't know this for a fact. I know the accuracy of the weapons that we were using. But if you really, really want to make sure you're getting it accurate, you're programming it and you're using a laser. And the best laser use is someone who's on the ground, point it right at where you want it to go.
My most favorite acronym right now pertains to this very well. And it's very simple. FAFO.
In Latin, it's beautiful.
Oh, what is the Latin, Commander?
Oh, I have it written down. I'm not even going to try to say it on air. I'll upset more people. That and COVID brought up in one show by me. That's it. The stock market's probably going to take a kick on the overnight hours because Cobra was talking the other C.
Uh-oh.
So we had a question.
FAFO.
We had a question from Ostens. It was kind of directed at me. How effective do you think it was? I think it was very effective. If you guys remember correctly last week, I didn't really mean to play fool's theater there, but I said, oh, yeah, they'll be taking 2 mops with them. And the Padre said, well, wait a minute now, Cobra. Gross weight and, this. And I just went, bloop.
Yep.
I didn't have any inside information except that I know that when you do these kinds of things, the internal capacity of this airplane allows them to take 2. The problem is you generally have to figure out where you're going to lower your gross weight, which means you're going to have to take less fuel. When you take less fuel, you need more tankers. You have more tankers, you're going to do this. And that's how they did it. And the reason that they did what they did was so that you could get the first one to make the hole, for the second one to make the deeper hole, to make the last one for the deeper hole, and just in case we're going to put 2 more after that. And when that was done, they rolled over to the other facility. Now, this airplane is an older airplane, but it is an incredible airplane. It's peerless until the B-21 comes out. The operation it goes, you've heard me say this before, if you do not have an aerial tanker fleet, you're not a world power. And we've really have fought hard to maintain that capability. I believe these strikes are completely effective. Do I think that Iran is completely stopped or they do that? I think they are set back for many years. I think it might be the edge to get them to have a reformation of sorts, to get themselves straightened out. I actually love the Persian people very much. I went to college with a number of them around the time of the fall of the Shah. And those that were here fell very quickly into 2 groups. And it was interesting to watch, and it was very sad to watch. Those that came here as what I would say lower class or middle class or less, much like myself, going to college, and those that came with money. And they watched what was happening in their nation, and they were all trapped. And they didn't know where it was going. But I can tell you for the most part, most wanted to get home to their families because they cared about their families. But they also knew that if they went back, all of them, regardless of where they landed, they were headed for bad times. It's an important culture that has been screwed over by this situation.
Well, and let me just piggyback a little bit about what you said about the bombing and everything. What people, and they said this, but they're not really emphasizing it. They killed all their scientists. They killed all their generals. I mean, if you take out all their nuclear scientists, you could have all the uranium in Iran, but if nobody can put Humpty Dumpty back together again, it ain't going to work. You know what I mean? If the scientists are all killed and your top generals are killed, you're really in a bad situation besides, the ability to do it.
And I would imagine that the job boards now in Iran advertising for nuclear scientists probably aren't getting a lot of response from people.
You're going to probably have to up the bonus just a tiny bit. There's going to have to be a big sign-on bonus, I would think. I would pose this. There's 2 things I want to throw in before I turn it around because we're working towards the end of the show. One is I would put this raid up there with the Doolittle raid during World War II. And compare and contrast. Dark days of World War II, Japan appears absolutely impenetrable. Europe is aflame. Asia is aflame. And they cobble together the capability to put medium bombers on an aircraft carrier, and fly them and make a strike. Fairly inconsequential what it did for physical damage, but what it did for morale, what it did to send a message to the Imperial Japanese government, which was a pretty evil outfit on its own, the things they were doing to the whole region as well as their own nation, the direction they took it, pretty amazing when you think about that. This particular mission neutralized a very sensitive, we're talking nukes, and we're dancing around that saber here and getting that under control. Because quite honestly, if they really wanted to make a bigger show, they could have used something that had a nuclear warhead on it to do the same kind of knockout and used a lot less aircraft and done that. So when you think about
that's opening up Pandora's box.
Absolutely. And also, I am very sad for the loss of life in Iran, in Israel, and all the places in between that are caught in the middle of this. But the numbers are very low. The message, the act was complete. The message is sent, and it's an opportunity for everybody to do what the Padre was saying. Okay, time to step back and really have a quick talk here, what we're going to do. Yeah, I know the mullah came out and said, yep, they beat Israel. They slapped us in the face. We win, whatever. I think everyone kind of sees the nonsense of what that is for what it is. And if that holds his position together with his people, I don't think it's a long-term strategy that works. But whatever floats, that goes. But I think when you look at the times that we're living, what's happened here, and look at that capability, it was pretty amazing what we got as a result out of this.
I have a question that I know is on the minds of many Americans. 37 hours in the cockpit of an airplane with one other person. I don't know what the longest flight you've ever done nonstop is, but I would imagine that, okay, is there a toilet on board? Is there something to eat?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about.
Well, first of all, one of the reasons that you can do what you do with that airplane is because we have got to the level of sophistication and the ability for the autopilot to perform a lot of those functions. So when you're in the cruise flight aspect of it, the autopilot is flying. There is a bed of types in there. Now, I don't have intimate detail of how that all works out, because one of the great dangers that goes on there is if you would have to eject, the person that is lying in that bed is not most likely wearing their parachute. Most parachutes are now part of the ejection seat. You have a harness that you plug into, and that's how you get into your ejection system. And I don't have intimate detail on the B2 how that works. So you have autopilot, computer support to what is going on. You split the duties. One pilot is really designated the person that's doing the flying, and then the other occupant, the other pilot, is more in the mission control and monitoring systems, and then they switch back and forth through that. There's most likely other activity that is going on to help rest, raise alertness, and then relax to come down. The refuelings are very demanding. It's demanding on the pilots flying the aircraft that's receiving the fuel, as well as the people that are delivering the fuel, the tanker aircraft that are delivering the fuel.
Right, because they're at night, right? And
right. At night
Can they see the tanker? Do they turn a light on for them? Or
yes.
Okay.
There's night enhanced capabilities of various types that allow you to see it. And then when you get closer, you have lights that guide you into position so that you know. And you're looking at signals on the tanker itself that put you into position so that, and then in the case of the Air Force tankers, that picture that's behind me, The big difference between the Air Force and the Naval Forces, Marines, is that in this case, you have a boom that is inserted into a receptacle on the fixed-wing airplane that you see, in this case, the B-2. That is flown by the boom operator, highly trained member of the crew, that flies those two V's that are sticking up just above my name are airfoils that they control that, and they can extend and retract, and then they plug it in. The reason that the Air Force does that is that you can move a large amount of fuel in a very short time. Helicopters, naval jets, marine jets use just the opposite system. They have a hose that comes out with a lifesaver shaped parachute with a cone shaped spline, and the refueling probe is on the aircraft, and the pilot flies up and hits that arrangement, drives the probe into there. Once that connection is made, there's a little slack in the hose, the fuel goes down. But because it's a flexible hose, it takes longer to get the fuel into the airplane. So in the case of something like a B-2, it could be transport airplanes that are moving critical supplies. When you have a number of these airplanes, you want to get in, get fuel, and get off so the next airplane can get in. Or you have to have multiple tankers. And anytime you put multiple airplanes together, you're just making the level of complexity and the opportunity for something to go wrong go up higher. So that's the reason that it goes on. It was a tremendous effort. Not a lot being said about the Navy that popped up and shot the cruise missiles that went in. And the cruise missiles could not hit before the B-2s got there. Everything had to hit at the same time so that nothing got tipped, that everything was going on. Absolutely amazing. We haven't even talked about the fighter escorts, the F-22s, the F-35s that were blanketing the area. I have no idea what the Israelis, and I'm sure they had a piece of the action as well.
I was going to ask, because they obviously didn't fly those single-seat fighters all the way.
No,
37 hours.
They came out of other countries. So I'm going to leave. We're almost at the end of the show. So I just want to leave it with this. There's a lot of reasons we did this strike beyond the fact that we wanted to neutralize the ability for Iran to put enough radioactive material together to make a bomb. There are other countries in the region, not the name Israel, that are rejoicing that this is over, that this has been had the brakes put on. And it'll never be fully understood. It's right there, right after Lincoln's assassination, about what other countries in that region did to support this operation. That they can never come out and say what they did or how they supported it.
Not to mention that the majority of those countries are Sunni as opposed to Iran, which is Shia, a big divide in the Islamic religion.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of heartburn between them over that.
Reminds me a lot of Ireland with Catholics and Protestant.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So when we always like to throw stones in one direction, I always like to go back to part of my own heritage and go, no, that wasn't played too brilliantly. All right, UAP Crossfire. Hopefully an entertaining and interesting show for you. I think one takeaway is go out and do what Don talked about. I think one of the most important repositories for saving civilization, it might be the used bookstore.
Yep.
Get yourself a big shopping bag. Go pick up the books. Go to the yard sales. Go to those sales and pick them up. There's a lot of great information. And I will give a plug for Mac Maloney. If you have not picked up UFOs in Wartime, he has 2 volumes out on that. It's a nonfiction, it's a nonfiction historical. He covers some incredible cases of UFOs in wartime. 2 absolutely great books. Everybody who's into this needs to have those. Extremely well written. And there's many in that area, but it's one of my favorite series that's out there. That's the kind of information you need to have. So when you're reading by candlelight because, the electricity's not working tonight, you'll have some info.
And have spare coffee filters and duct tape on hand.
At all times.
And wear your mask in your car.
Okay. That definitely got us the boot on YouTube right there. Everything was fine. That was the one that put us over the top.
It's always
UAP
me.
Crossfire for Chris DePerno, Dan the Padre Carlson, and Don Ecker. They're all smiling at me and giving me
You'll get it right one day, Deuce.
Yeah.
You'll get it right.
Decker. That's all I need to say. Everyone knows. Thank you very much. And thanks for your continued support to KGRA DB. And I can't close the show without saying Bill Skywatcher, who keeps this all together and keeps the clock cooking, thank you.